Good morning. What I'm going to start doing is I'm going to give you a very short introduction, a personal introduction to myself, then a career introduction, and I'm going to take you on a timeline. I just arrived a couple of days ago from Abu Dhabi. I live there. I currently work in New York University, Abu Dhabi. And I am so grateful for this opportunity to be here with you today, sharing my story, sharing some of the things that I have picked up along the way. And I also apologize about my beautiful presentation right here, as you can see. It's transiting and settling down. So a brief introduction to myself. My name is Esraa Bani. I'm a mother of 3 children. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3.5-year-old. And yeah. Oh, and my dad, yes. And my dad is right here. Yes. And my aunt is right here. I have a groupie in the back, right there. So, yeah, so I lived, I was born in Sudan. I was born in Soba. I always pass by that hospital to see where I was born. I lived for my toddler years in Wad Madani, where my dad was a professor in Jamiat Al Jazeera at that time. And then we moved to the United States of America. And during that whole journey, for a brief period of time, my dad was an expat in Saudi Arabia. So I lived there for about 8 years, and then we went back to the States. So it's a really globalized experience, a little bit of Sudan and a little bit of, the Middle East, and of course, Washington, D.C., which is a very transient city where, because of the administration changes every 4 years or so on, people are always coming and people are always leaving. Unlike places where you're in one place and you grow up your whole life knowing the same people. So it's a very interesting experience. In terms of career, I did pre-med track and I did clinical laboratory sciences. And when I graduated, I applied to medical school. I got into a program in Georgetown University. And I didn't go to med school. I told my parents I actually wanted to do public health, which, up until now, they think it was really interesting that I chose that instead of med school. But at that time, it was really interesting. It was the year that I actually got married, and I felt like I can suddenly make decisions on following my heart. And I was more interested on in the ground. I never really thrived in indoor environments. So I started moving more towards what aligned better with my personality and what makes me thrive, basically, and happier. So let's start with timelines. There are 3 things that I'm basically going to mention here today. Our topic today is about women leadership. So the first one is about being mindful of doors that open. That's at the beginning of, my career. And then I'm going to speak about learning about who your true partners are. And that's during my work phase. Those are things that I started learning. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is obstacles that naturally come with being female. And this is actually where I am right now in my phase, in my career, and so on and so forth. So noticing opportunities, and this is really a big highlight for me, and it's something that taught me a lot. Back in 2007, I graduated from my master's program. I was really excited. I felt like I could change the world, and I went into Washington, D.C., and I didn't go like how naturally people go by titles. They want to, climb up the ladder. I went to the organization that I felt so closely felt very inspired by their mission. It was called Population Action International. So I went there and I was like, hi, take me. I would like to work on AIDS and women empowerment and all of these things, all of the jargon. I basically threw it in there. They were like, okay, it's great you have a master's degree, but we only have an admin assistant position right now. Would you like to take it? With my master's, I was like, yes. So I started off right outside of my graduate schooling, a step back because of passion. So I sat there and I was like, in 6 months, they will recognize me, and then I would sooner or later become a senior manager here. And I sat organizing my sticky notes in my desk every day, offering help. I basically kept reading like about all of the different things that they were doing. I kept volunteering to do like the fact sheets and the research and all of that, and time went by. There was one particular meeting that I really, really looked forward to, and it was by the USAID, and they had this task force where they come and they discuss basically strategy on what to do about like poverty and women's empowerment issues, gender-based violence and stuff. So I remember that once there was nobody in the office that had time to go to this very important meeting, and they sent me and I was so excited. I went and I took notes, and next I was in charge of actually setting up the meetings. So I would come in and I would like order the catering and all of that, and everybody around me, they're like, Esraa, you're wasting away your education. I was still there, right? Ordering, I'm listening to the meetings, I'm listening to what they have, I'm just like really like taking it all in. Then what happened was that kept happening, and there was a particular person that used to come to these meetings. His name was Bill Ryson. You can look him up. He's I think right now he works in Population Council or something like that. He would come and he would come to these meetings, and I knew all of their names. I knew what everyone was doing. I knew what came out of the meetings. I typed up the notes, but I wasn't really part of that, right? I was on the sidelines. And for anyone who has done this for a year or 2 or 3, you know, the voices start coming in saying, you're wasting your time, you have a graduate degree, your parents brought you to the US to kind of do something out of this, what are you doing, right? But I stayed there until one day, a company, a documentary company came into our office. They were doing a documentary about world population. And they interviewed people at the United Nations and lots of different places, and we were specifically focused on population. And they came in and they said, we would like to interview someone for this, for this documentary. It's going to be large, it's going to be big. So who do you have here? And they were like, oh, we have so-and-so, the CEO, or we have this person. And they were like, guys, let us be a little bit honest. We're looking for an African woman because this movie is about Africa and we kind of don't have any African women. And in that organization, you look and there sits Esraa. So they're like, oh, we don't think that there is somebody that could, do this interview. And this is me. They were like, what about her? And they were like, yes, Esraa, right. Well, yeah, you can interview her. And then they were like, make it quick. It's probably a very short, interview or whatever. So I go in there, and it wasn't 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It was like 2 hours because I took in all of the information. You never know when that door opens, right? I could have been sitting and moping about like how my career has all fallen apart and I'm doing nothing and I let everyone down and I'm getting paid less than the receptionist, right? But I was learning. I wasn't just typing notes. I actually was researching on my own, on the side. I was reading everything. I was reading in the metro. I knew a lot about the field. So when we sat, we talked, and they just liked everything that was coming in, and they kept recording and recording. And when we left, they left. They left, and about a year later, the organization was going through financial issues or whatever, and I left myself. And I went into another organization. I worked at APA, the American Psychological Association. in an AIDS program through the NIH. And I was there, new life. I just had my first child and I moved on with my life. Then I get a phone call in my office in my new job. And I pick up the phone and it was like, hello, this is Bill. And I was like, he was like, this is Bill Rice. And I was like, hi. And he was like, did you ever do this like interview and this like documentary? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you know, I kept watching it and I was really bothered that I didn't know you. I know everybody in the DC field. And I was like, who's this young African woman that I don't know? So he was looking for me and he called my old job and they're like, we don't know. She went to this APA. She went somewhere like, and he looked for me and he said, I am going to fly into DC to come and see you because I need to meet you. So he flies into Washington, DC. I walk into the metro station and I meet him. And he pulls the chair for me and he seats me down and he asks me what I want to drink. This is the same person that I brought in water for, who has never seen me. He's never seen me, right? But he's actually seen me so many times. So when I meet him and he was like, wow, I've never met you and stuff. And I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, when do I drop this information? And I was like, Bill, actually, you know, we've met so many times. We met so many times. I actually, you know, I got your RSVPs. I'm the one who kind of arranged everything for you and stuff. And he was really shocked. He was really, really shocked at how I was on track to grow in that area. And I moved on to like a different area. Did I at the moment like seize it and start to do something out of that? No, it was just a sign for me. The sign is that this documentary is still out there. It's amazing. It won so many awards. And it was that moment of time. I could have sat and said a couple of things that didn't make sense. They could have cut it out. You know, it's always be ready for when the door opened. And that in and of itself became a guiding way, a guiding thing for me. So now I still follow my heart and I go by passion, not by career line or positioning myself, but I'm always ready. I'm always ready, just learning, and I'm always ready at any time to, for example, come up here and speak. Ready at any time. So this is the first thing. Seize the moment. Notice when the doors are ready. Don't sit and just mope and, you know, do that. Everything has a time. The second thing is that knowing your partners. So at that time, so I did my, you know, master's in public health, and specifically the thing that I worked on in my dissertation was FGM. So I worked with female genital mutilation, particularly in Sudan, with Ahfad University, United, and with the UNV program, the United Nations Volunteers Program. And I remember during that period of time, it became in each phase of life, there is a theme that keeps reoccurring. For me, the theme was, who do you partner with? So I started noticing things such as, I remember there was a program for a malaria program where people in a really nice first world country, they sat around the table and they decided to solve this mosquito problem in a village in Africa was to design this net, mosquito net, with the medicine on it, so that they can help the people and it's going to eradicate, you know, malaria from the area. So they spent all of this money designing the tool and distributing the tool to everyone. And it was a fishing village. And you need to hang the mosquito net on something. Some people were like, you know, they sleep outside in al-hosh or whatever. So people started using these nets to fish with, and there was poisoning. And I remember when I was like writing up about like the lessons learned or whatever, it was the lessons learned, but it was a huge problem. What's the root of the problem? The root of the problem is this top down. The experts, the professionals, sitting somewhere trying to tell people what they actually need, right? Because they're more educated, because they had more experience, because what do people actually need? actually targeting areas they didn't live in, targeting people that they don't know anything about, it is a problem. It became like a huge problem, and it caused more damage than it caused helping, right? So this theme of partnership started occurring over and over again. So when we went to Sudan, to an area called Abu Said, we were working on this eradicating FGM, which is, you're talking about ideologies, you're talking about culture. It's a very difficult thing to come in from outside and be like, oh, let's just do, sex ed and in the schools, and it's gonna work, and we're gonna divide up the city into, like coming in like that with the ideals that are coming in from outside. Because it worked in somewhere in West Africa. You're gonna come and take that, you're gonna implement it in Sudan, it's not gonna work. So I remembered from that experience, we started like looking into who are our partners. And it became really evident that when they see a bunch of people from the UN walking into Abu Said, teaching them about stuff, regardless of how much they've learned, they're outsiders coming into their communities, telling them what you guys think, so that's great, thank you. Sudanese are nice. They'll be like, oh, thank you and stuff. They'll take the pamphlet, but it's not gonna do real change. So we started working on identifying these partners and training volunteers in the community, people who are within the community, to teach people in the community, and being like 6 steps back. So they don't really see you. You're not interacting with them. You're not in the communities, and really having that discussions and focus groups with the women who do the circumcision, with the mothers, with the teachers, with the students and stuff. But a new population emerged that we didn't even think about. A lot of the times with FGM, people know it's a women issue, it's women on women or whatever. The strongest partner in that whole thing in women empowerment was actually the boys that were in high school. So boys during that age have a say in the household. They could be overprotective of their sisters, and they listen to them. And it seems like fathers weren't so much into yes or no for like FGM. And this whole time people were focusing so much on the women, only the women themselves, and educating them, that this youth population was side-blended because people weren't talking and exploring the community deeply on how the system worked. So when you explored how the system worked, we realized that in order for us to eradicate this and help a lot of girls coming up, and we need to work with this population of boys' schools, which was not even in the plan, and it was an extremely successful program. You can find write-ups about it if you write UNV, FGM, and AHFAD. You will see there's reports about it, but it was really genius. It was like taking many, many steps back and trying to find partners and being open to how we've always known it to be, is like a woman thing, and now we have to work with boys, and in order to reach rights for women. So that was, in some communities, is actually working with the men, with HIV/AIDS and a lot of things, but particularly in Sudan, in Abu Said, it was the boys that are at a particular age group were the ones that helped succeed the program. So really, this whole partnership thing, regardless of where we are in life and how much we've learned and all of this, there is this urge of giving back. Give back wisely. Give back wisely, and be okay with not knowing. And be very aware that when you go into communities that you don't know much about, give it a step back and try to work with them as partners. Don't come top down and giving them knowledge, because things might not really work the way that you think you would, for it to work. So there was the whole theme of being aware of doors opening and being ready for it. The whole theme of really being aware of what you do not know and being aware of how to work with people to help them. Then came the phase in my life where now I'm a mom of 3 children, right? So I myself took a step back. And in women leadership, this is the thing, right? Especially like in Sudan and lots of different communities and stuff, if you look like one of those firecrackers, and then you step back and they see you with all of these children, they'll be like, remember Esraa Bani's daughter? Wallah, she used to, we thought she's going to be senator by now. Look at her. Oh, the children, she's pushing a stroller. Oh, miskina, you know. There comes that part, right? And it's a huge struggle because you're trying to, first of all, understand that they are not going to be young forever, that you're still young. You don't have to do things when you're, you know, there's time for everything. And it's also like working. Also, you might want to work a little bit, consult a little bit from home, do what's comfortable. And each woman has a different capacity. Each one of us has a very different capacity. You need to know your capacity. For me, I knew that my capacity was I had to try not being in the workforce long enough to know that I'm a career woman. I took off 4 years. 4 years I was at home. As they say, بحرق البيض. I can't cook. I don't know how to do anything in the home field. I spent a lot of time with my children and stuff. But then there comes a time where role modeling, or as you can see with a lot of the presentations, is about starting with your family. I have 2 young daughters and they're looking at me, right? So it is extremely important for them to see me for who I am, right? So you hear of stories of children like going through boxes of their parents when they were young, and they pull up a picture and they see their mom playing the piano and they're like, Mom, you play the piano? Oh yeah, I stopped doing that because I was taking care of you. Then who is this person that you're introducing to your child if it's not you, right? So I wanted my children, as a woman leader, to know all of the different things of me. Today I'm happy, today I'm not happy, and I talk to them about it. Today I'm concerned about Sudan, and this is what's happening. They know the names of everyone. They ask me, what is Al-Assam doing today? You know, like they talk to, we're like a unit. They know what I'm passionate about. They know that I struggle with work. They know that I'm mommy's late because I was in a meeting. So they see it and it's normal, it's regular. Like it's just, this is part of life. This is my mother and this is what she likes and this is, you know, part of it. So when I went back to the workforce the second time around, back into the research field again, it was better than the first time when I didn't know. Because when I was working, I was like, I needed to leave. I felt like I needed to leave work because I was not there for my children. When I left work, I was unhappy. So then when I went back, I appreciated it was balanced, finally. Like I appreciated it so much because I was happier. And even though I was tired, there's different, guys, you need to know that there's different types of exhaustions. Different types. You can be exhausted, depleted, or exhausted, energized. For me, when I go to work, and I come back, I'm exhausted, energized. So I'm exhausted, but I've had an outlet. I've done something creative. I've been working on formulas and data, and I'm like trying to figure things out and whatever. When I come back home, I am really happy, like when I meet my children. Whereas when I was home with them all the time, I didn't have an outlet. So was that better for them or not? These are big, you know, questions and decisions that we need to look at and we need to overcome, because I see and I meet a lot of sisters, lots of women out there who are like what they've mentioned, like with the PhDs and careers and all of these different things, and they took a step back and then they didn't have that courage to come back or feel like they can't come back or you can always come back and you can always start from anywhere. There isn't a particular formula to it. You just have to know that that's for you and that's what you would like to do. And also I was just speaking to this mom in the back that I was really inspired by her. This really looked like me when I was with Wafa, and it almost puts tears into my eyes because I remember in the 4 years that I was out, I went to a lecture. I will still remember it, and I still remember where it was. There was a professor that came from Yale University that was talking about early childhood education and early childhood development. And I came in with my daughter. My daughter made noise, and somebody escorted me out. And I remember that the only thing available, they will give women that's available in the community, bouncy castles, face painting, balloons. I mean, it's so, that's not what all women or mothers are about. I'm not about, I don't know, bubbles and ice cream trucks. This is great. It's all great, but those are the only places that they would allow for us to appear with our children. So I think the community as a whole needs to be more supportive, meaning speakers need to be a little bit more in allowance of a little bit of noise coming out of children there. You should give the mother the opportunity to, based on her own self, regulate and know this is time for me to step out. Give them a little bit of space, give them a little bit of dignity, because, and accessibility to knowledge, accessibility to information, to inspire them. Because there are tons of us at home with our children without opportunities or places designed for us to appear, to advance. So it's a community issue. And it is not a very rare one. It's a very common issue, and we need to start somewhere. And I think it starts with the communities, and if it's not available, you start a program where you invite speakers and you tell the speakers, I'm inviting moms and there might be a little bit of noise, but make it accessible for them to ask questions, to be part of it, so that we can all advance together and you don't leave us behind. So I just wanted to tell you thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I didn't speak so much about the meat or the core of what I do in terms of research and stuff, but in such a short time it's always very difficult to cram a whole lifetime in there. But thank you all.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.